Then the next important structure is ribosome. Ribosome are made up of RNA and protein. Two things, ribonucleic acid and protein. And they are not surrounded by membrane. Membrane is not there. You have two main type of, we have discussed, we have prokaryotic organism and eukaryotic organism. So eukaryote have 80S ribosome, whereas prokaryote have 70S. The ribosome present in case of prokaryote is 70S and eukaryote it is 80S. This point you need to remember. Eukaryote 80S ribosome and prokaryote 70S ribosome. This S stands for Swedberg constant or Swedberg unit, which is sedimentation coefficient. So basically these are a bit scientific. Remember 70S and 80S. Sedimentation. When you centrifuge, when you rotate thing in a centrifuge, the things move and settle down. This process is called centrifugation. Based on that, 70S and 80S. Now if we go into the 70S and 80S ribosome, take a look over here. Prokaryote 70S and this is 80S. 70S has two components, 30S, 50S. This is not math, this is sedimentation. And 80S has two subcomponents, 70S and 60S. So these two components, the smaller unit and the larger unit, can be separate and they join with each other at the time of protein synthesis. Now 2009 Nobel Prize Chemistry was given for detailed mapping of ribosome. Ribosome is what? Protein factory of the cell. So basically the information on the DNA is finally translated into protein. So ribosome translates the passive DNA information into protein. Now this 2009 Nobel Prize was given to three scientists, Adayona, Thomas Tees and Venkatraman Ramakrishna. So on DNA, mRNA is formed. On DNA, mRNA is formed. Say this is DNA. Based on DNA, you have formation of mRNA. And based on mRNA, and finally you have formation of protein. So the actual functional molecule is protein. So ribosomes read the information in the messenger RNA and transform that information into protein, that is the functional unit. And this process is called translation. The formation of protein is called translation. So translation finally converts the coded information into the functional aspect. The coded formation is DNA and the functional aspect is your protein. So Venkatraman Ramakrishnan is the last Indian to get Nobel Prize in Science. Remember 2009 Nobel Prize Chemistry. The recent Nobel Prize that the Indian won was for economics. Abhijit Banerjee got Nobel Prize. Abhijit Banerjee, Nobel Prize is for physics. Economics. It is not for science. So the last Nobel Prize, if in case of science, is for Venkatraman Ramakrishnan for his study of ribosomes. He, along with Adayona, an Israeli lady, and Thomas Tees, studied the detailed functioning of ribosome. They studied the detailed functioning of ribosome. So another historic moment for Indian. Nobel Prize Science, Venkatraman Ramakrishnan. And they studied ribosome by this technique called X-ray crystallography. The technique they followed was X-ray crystallography. Now ribosomes are found in all living organisms, from a simple bacteria to humans. Simple bacteria to humans. Many of these bacteria affect the human. Therefore, the ribosomes are also the perfect target for drugs. Many of the today's antibiotics, they attack the ribosome of bacteria but do not affect human. For example, tetracycline. So many of the antibiotic act on 70S ribosome. They act on 70S ribosome. So the net result is the antibiotic act on 70S ribosome. So when they act on the 70S ribosome, the bacterial protein synthesis is affected. Take a look. They attack the ribosome of bacteria. So ribosome of bacteria is what? 70S and not 80S. So the 80S ribosome are not affected, whereas the 70S ribosomes are affected. That is why bacterial protein synthesis is affected. Bacterial protein synthesis is affected. And that is how the antibiotics help in overcoming the disease. So antibiotics either prevent bacterial protein synthesis or wrong bacterial protein. So either it will block the protein synthesis or a wrong protein is formed. That is the mechanism of action of your antibiotics. That is how antibiotics help in overcoming the disease condition. Either the bacteria is not making the protein or the bacteria is making a wrong protein. Then the next structure associated is centrosome and centriole. So centrosome, the next important structure is your centrosome and centriole. So the centrosome contains two cylindrical structure called centriole. Two cylindrical like structure. These two cylindrical structure are present in centrosome, and these two cylinders are called centriole. So these centriole are perpendicular to each other, and they form the basal body of a cilia or flagella, and they also form spindle fiber during the process of cell division in animal cell. In animal cell, they form spindle fiber during cell division. Now this is the process of cell division. The mitochondria are arranged at the center, and these green color structure that you see are spindle fibers. These are the spindle fibers. They get the spindle fiber get attached to the chromosome center, and they pull apart the chromosome. So chromosome break at that point. Now moving on to chromosome. We had studied slightly about chromosome. So chromosome are visible as rod shaped structure only at the time of division. Otherwise, the DNA is in the form of a chromatin. So this is the cell, this is the nucleus. So these are thread-like structure called chromatin. Only when the cell is about to divide, the DNA gets arranged into these structure called chromosomes. So chromosomes are visible only at the time of cell division. Otherwise, it is in the form of chromatin. Now the functional segment of DNA are called genes. One gene codes for one protein. The functional segment of DNA are called genes. They code for protein. Now this is the structure of a chromosome. Chromosome is made up of DNA, and each chromosome has a primary constriction or centromere. This point at the center, this point is your centromere. Each chromosome is made up of DNA tightly wound around protein called histone. So DNA is made up of two things. Chromosome is made up of two things, DNA and histone. The two components are DNA and second component is histone protein. So the DNA is wound around the histone protein. If I make a very simple diagram, say this is the histone protein. This is the histone protein, and the DNA is wound around these histone protein like this. The blue color structure is your histone and the red color is the DNA. Now the ends of chromosome are called telomeres. The ends of chromosome are called telomeres. Telomeres. The end of chromosome is called telomeres. So this acts as protective capping of chromosome. Protective capping of chromosome. During the process of aging, the length of telomere is reduced. So as the cell ages, the length of telomere is reduced. And this increases the chance of mutation in the cell. As one ages, as your age grows, the length of telomere will be reduced, and therefore the chance of mutation or change in DNA will increase. There is an enzyme called telomerase. Telomerase enzyme is there, and this synthesizes the telomeric DNA. It makes telomeric DNA, and this is operating at the end of chromosome. This enzyme consists of a protein and a RNA sequence. So this RNA sequence acts as template for making the telomeric DNA. If the telomerase activity is high, telomere length is maintained and cellular senescence or aging is delayed. This is found in cancerous cell. So which is considered to have cancer cell of eternal life. In some other cases, there can be defective telomerase, resulting in damaged cell and early aging. Damaged cell and early aging. The Nobel Prize Medicine 2009 was for study of telomeres and enzyme telomerase. So the Nobel Prize Medicine 2009 was for study of telomeres and the enzyme telomerase. The scientists at Stanford University have used the enzyme telomerase to increase the length of the telomere by 1000 nucleotides. and therefore the enzyme telomerase is being proposed as an anti-aging enzyme. Anti-aging enzyme. Anti-aging enzyme. So it can increase the length of telomeres. It can increase the length of telomeres. That is why the enzyme telomerase can be used as an anti-aging enzyme. It can be used as an anti-aging enzyme. Another aspect of aging is also oxidative stress. Another aspect of aging process is also oxidative stress. Oxidative stress. Oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is the result of metabolic process inside the body. Now what happens? There is formation of free oxygen atom. Formation of free oxygen atom, and this is electrically charged. This is electrically charged. Free oxygen atom, and this is electrically charged. And if these are not neutralized, they will produce more free radicals. And these free radicals can damage lipid, protein or DNA of the cell. The free radicals can damage the lipid that is the fat layer, the protein or the DNA of the cell. Fruits and vegetable. It is now being said that vegetarian diet gives you a longer life. Many people are turning vegetarian. One of the reason is turning vegetarian or fruit, and some others also consider that fruit and vegetables should be a compulsory component of our food. Why? Fruit and vegetable have high amount of antioxidants, and these antioxidants neutralize the free radical. That is why fruits and vegetables should be part of our daily diet system. Now moving on to chromosome number. The number of chromosome is fixed in different organisms. The number of chromosome is fixed in different organisms. For example, human have 46 chromosomes. And these chromosomes exist in pair. 46 chromosome or 23 pair. So there is a pair of chromosome for each kind. So this paired condition of chromosome is called diploid. The normal cells of our body have paired condition of chromosome. Paired condition of chromosome, and this is called as diploid. This is called as diploid. If you have one set of chromosome, that is called haploid. This is found in gametes. Gametes are the sperm and ova. In sperm and ova you have one set of chromosome, whereas in normal cell you have two set of chromosome, and this condition is diploid, normal cell. But in some plants and other, there can be multiple sets of chromosome. Triploid 3 set, tetraploid 4 set, pentaploid 5, hexaploid 6. So most of the commercial variety of crops that we are using are polyploid. Most of the commercial crops are polyploid. And plants have a greater capacity to tolerate change in chromosome number. If there is change in chromosome number, animals generally do not survive, or if they survive, they are sterile. Sterile means not giving birth to the next generation, not giving birth to next generation. So if they are not giving birth to next generation, this condition is considered as sterile. So in animals, either they will not survive if the chromosome number is variable, or if they survive, they will sterile, that is, they will not give birth to the next generation. Next generation. Now the next point is, the next topic is cell division. We discussed about different components of the cell, right from mitochondria to the plasma membrane to the other structure that are present inside and on the surface. Now, moving on to the process of cell division, we also discussed about chromosomes and other aspects. Now, cell division are of two types, mitosis and meiosis. Cell division are of two types. One is your mitosis and second is meiosis. So we have these two types, mitosis and meiosis. Mitosis and meiosis. We will take a look at both of them, mitosis and here it is meiosis. Now mitosis occurs in normal cells. Normal cell, your skin cell, liver cell, lung cell, all of them are normal cells. Meiosis occurs in gametic cell. There are two gametic cells, that is sperm and ova. So meiosis occurs during the formation of sperm and ova. Sperm and ova. Now in case of mitotic division, chromosome numbers remain same. Chromosome number remains same. Whereas in case of meiosis, it is reduced to half. Chromosome number is reduced to half. Chromosome number is reduced to half. In case of mitosis, the DNA of the daughter cell or the cells formed after mitosis are carbon copy of one another. That is, they are clone. So the cells that are formed by mitosis are clone of each other. Whereas in the process of meiosis, there is a phenomenon called crossing over and recombination. In process of meiosis, there is a phenomenon called crossing over and recombination. And this leads to variation. Therefore, all the sperm and ova that are formed by meiosis are unique. They are not carbon copy of each other. The sperm and ova that are formed are not carbon copy of each other. And this leads to variation, very important point. Meiosis leads to variation. This is very important. And evolution selects those variants that are most suitable for that environment. So the basic material for natural selection is provided by meiosis. During the process of meiosis, there is process of recombination and crossing over. So basically what happens? Basically the chromosome in pairs exchange genetic material. I will show you a simple process of your meiosis, that is crossing over and recombination. For example, this is the first pair of chromosome. Now what happens during the process of crossing over? During the process of crossing over, the arms cross over like this, and then this is the case of the chromosome existing in pair. Now what happens? Between the chromosomes, there is exchange of genetic material. The chromosome exchange the genetic material. The chromosome which are existing in the pairs exchange genetic material between them. This process is called recombination. The first step was crossing over, and the second step is recombination. So this point is crossing over. The chromosome in pair, they cross over each other, and then this is recombination, new combination in being formed. That is why variation occurs in case of meiosis. So all the sperm and ova that are formed by meiosis have variation, and this is very important from the point of view of evolution. Evolution works where? Evolution works on this process. Evolution works on this process. So this is the process of crossing over and recombination that occurs only in the meiosis. It is not occurring in mitosis. The process of crossing over and recombination occurred in meiosis and not mitosis. It occurred in meiosis and not mitosis. That you have to remember. And this leads to variation. That is why the sperm and ova that are formed by meiosis, sperm and ova that are formed by meiosis, are variant. They are not same. They are variant. This variation is there. Now the next important thing linked with your mitosis, meiosis, that is the reproduction process, is sex determination. You have in case of human male and female, that is the sex of the human, male and female. Now humans have the inquisitiveness to find out the sex of the unborn child. This is a very peculiar case. There is a thing called sex determination and associated issues. So we try to find out the sex of the unborn child or the fetus. Now fetus is when you use the term fetus, it is the embryo going in the mother's womb. It is the embryo in mother's womb. Embryo in the mother's womb. Prenatal diagnostic technique. Prenatal means before birth. Prenatal diagnostic technique like amniocentesis and ultrasonography are used world over for detection of genetic diseases. Across the world. But in India, they have been misused to find out the sex of the fetus. And if it is a female child, often in many sections the fetus is eliminated, and this is called female feticide. The people know the sex of the unborn child or the fetus, and the fetus is aborted if it is female. This has led to large scale decline in the sex ratio. The sex ratio has declined due to female feticide. Now in case of human, Humans have 46 chromosome. Male 44 plus XY and female 44 plus XX. Female have 2X chromosome, whereas male has 1X chromosome and 1Y chromosome. So female has 2X chromosome and male has 1X and 1Y chromosome. 1X and 1Y chromosome. Now ultrasound. What are the techniques to find out the sex of the unborn fetus? The first technique is ultrasound or ultrasonography. This is a very commonly used diagnostic technique. The primary purpose of ultrasound is to monitor growth of the fetus and find out if there is any problem with the fetus. So primary purpose is to monitor growth of fetus. So what happens in case of ultrasound? Ultrasound uses sound waves that are not audible to human ear to get a visual image of the fetus. It uses sound wave to get a visual image of fetus on the screen. And sex is determined based on the presence of male genitalia, male genital organ, which is visible on the screen after 4 months of pregnancy. So in case of male, the fetus being male, the male genitalia will be visible, and based on that the technician or the radiologist can say this is a male child or a female child. Now this occurs around, you can find out the sex of the fetus around 4th month of pregnancy. Since sex detection is possible only at later age, abortion can be risky and it can lead to infertility in case of female. So that is the problem. But this is the most widely used technique. Most misused technique. The most maximum misuse have been done by ultrasound. But one more point, it is not 100% accurate. It is not 100% accurate. It gives idea about the sex of the fetus after 4th month of pregnancy, but it is not 100% accurate. It is not 100% accurate. Then another interesting technique to find the sex of the fetus is amniocentesis. The first one we took up was ultrasound. The second one is amniocentesis. Amniocentesis. Now the fetus in the womb of the mother is suspended, is in a sac that is filled with a liquid. The fetus is surrounded by sac and this sac is filled with a liquid. Now take a look at this diagram. This is the fetus growing in the mother womb. There are 2 layers around the fetus. The first one is amnion. The inner one is amnion. This is the inner one. And the outer one is chorion, outer membrane. Inner and the outer membrane. And here this liquid, this is a liquid filled space, and here you have amniotic fluid. Inside the amniotic layer you have the amniotic fluid. You have the amniotic fluid. So you have amnion, the inner layer, chorion, the outer layer, and inside the inner layer you have the amniotic fluid. You have the amniotic fluid. Now in case of amniocentesis, what we do, using a very fine needle, you draw out some amount of amniotic fluid from the sac with the help of a very fine needle inserted into the abdomen of the expectant mother. Now you will get amniotic fluid. This amniotic fluid contains cells belonging to the fetus. You take out, you separate the cell from the fetus, and then you do chromosomal analysis. So if it is 44 plus XX, it is female, and if it is 44 plus XY, here it is female or F, here it is male. So you take out and then do the chromosomal analysis. If 44 plus XY chromosome is visible, it is a male. So the primary purpose of this technique was to find out the genetic abnormality. The primary purpose of amniocentesis was to find out the chance of genetic abnormality in the unborn child. Many families have history of genetic disease. So they have genetic disease in his family. So amniocentesis can be used to find out whether the genetic disease is present in case of fetus or not. Now this technique is accurate. And this has been misused to identify the sex of the fetus. Now amniocentesis was first introduced in 1975 by AIIMS, New Delhi. Why? The purpose was to find out the congenital or genetic deformity or the genetic disease in the fetus. But by mid-80s only, this was largely misused to determine the sex of the unborn child or the fetus and carry out sex selective abortion. And this was the typical case of female feticide. This was the typical case of female feticide, the killing of the female. This led to decline in sex ratio. Due to female feticide, there was decline in sex ratio. Sex ratio is what? Number of female per 1000 male. Number of female per 1000 male. So the rampant misuse of ultrasound and amniocentesis led to large scale female feticide and the sex ratio declined. And in the background of this crisis, the state of Maharashtra first came out with an act or an ordinance to ban the prenatal sex determination. And this act was Maharashtra Regulation of Prenatal Diagnostic Technique 1988. This act prevented the misuse of ultrasound and amniocentesis for sex determination. So this act banned the use of ultrasound and amniocentesis to find out the sex of the fetus. This was the primary reason behind the declining sex ratio in the state of Maharashtra. So it was Maharashtra state was proactive. We can say Maharashtra was proactive, and that is why it was the first state to ban the use of amniocentesis and ultrasound. And the act was Maharashtra Regulation of Prenatal Diagnostic Technique Act. So this was a very good, so this is example of a social act. This is not a technical act. This law was brought in the background of declining sex ratio. So the purpose of this act was to prevent the social negativity of sex selective abortion. So the first law was from Maharashtra. Then came the Central Act. Then the center came out with an act, Prenatal Diagnostic Technique Regulation and Prevention of Misuse Act, PNDT Act 1994. First came the State Act and then came the Central Act, that PNDT Act 1994. So the purpose of this act was to regulate. The purpose was what? Regulate what? Prenatal diagnostic technique for the purpose of detecting genetic or metabolic disorder, chromosomal disorder, and certain congenital means before birth or sex-linked disorder, and prevent the misuse of such technique for prenatal sex determination leading to female feticide. So the Central Act wanted to regulate the use of amniocentesis and other such technique so that the parent can know about the genetic disorder in the unborn child. There is nothing wrong in it. But along with that, this act aimed with preventing the misuse of the technique to find out the sex of the fetus. So this is an example of a social legislation in the matter in technical aspect. Here the purpose was not regulation of, was not to manage a technique. Here the purpose was to prevent the misuse of the technique for sex selective abortion or female feticide. Now this act was passed in 1994. With the passage of time, newer techniques emerged. As time passes, new techniques came into the market. New technique like pre-implanted genetic diagnostics, PI. Implantation is putting the embryo in the uterus of the female. Nowadays you have IVF, in vitro fertilization. The ova or the egg is fertilized in the test tube and then the embryo is placed in the uterus. So that is pre-implantation, means before implanting the embryo in the uterus of the female. Pre-implantation genetic diagnostics. Then XY separation method. The sperm are separated based on X and Y composition. Then it also covers the assisted reproductive technologies such as IVF, intrauterine insemination and other things. So again, what happens by the next 10 years, techniques expand. New techniques come into the market. Say pre-implantation genetic diagnostics, Erickson method. There are several new techniques which come into the market. Therefore, the old act would become ineffective. That is why certain changes were made. Now going into some of the new techniques. Here it is XY separation technique. There is a method called Erickson method. This technique is used for preconception sex selection, means before implanting the uterus. You can separate X chromosome and Y chromosome bearing sperm. So the sperm can be separated based on X and Y bearing chromosome. If you want a male child, fertilization can be done with for male fetus. For male fetus, fertilize with X chromosome. Whereas for female fetus, fertilize with Y chromosome bearing sperm. So now you can decide the sex of the fetus. So why we should go to know the sex of the fetus? So the purpose of the old act would be defeated. In Eriksson method, we are separating the sperm based on X and Y composition. Now this was developed for animal husbandry, because in animal husbandry in Europe, this was developed for animal husbandry. Now in Europe, agriculture is mechanized. Agriculture mechanized. So male animal need is reduced. Male animal less requirement. That is why they wanted female animal. That is why the animal sperm were separated based on X and Y, and the X component was used for female fetus in case of cow, buffalo, etc. Then another technique is chorionic villi biopsy. We had just seen that there are two layers around the fetus. One is amnion, second is chorion. Inside the amnion you have the amniotic fluid, and the outer layer is chorion. Now this chorion layer gets attached with the uterus of the female. The chorion layer is attached with the uterus. Now from there the term chorionic villi biopsy. Chorionic villi. So what you do? You remove a part of the chorionic villi which is there around the fetus, and then it is tested for genetic defect. This also reveals the sex of the fetus. So this helps in early determination of sex of the fetus between the 6th and the 13th week of pregnancy. So this technique can also be utilized to find out the sex of the fetus. Then the next one is PIGD, pre-implantation genetic diagnostic. Implantation means putting the embryo in the uterus, that is implant. You are placing the embryo in the uterus. Now this is one of the latest technique which can be misused for sex selection. So what the clinics can do after IVF is that fertilization takes place in the after IVF. You get the IVF embryo. So you remove some of the cell from the test tube embryo or the IVF embryo, and then you do chromosomal analysis to identify the sex of the embryo. So IVF is done. In case of IVF, the sperm and ova fertilize. The sperm fertilizes the ova in a test tube. Then cell division, then zygote is formed, and after zygote, embryo. Zygote and then embryo. So IVF embryo is there. You allow it to grow, then you take out few of the cell, and then you do chromosomal analysis. If it is 44 plus XY male, and if it is 44 plus XY female. So that is pre-implantation genetic diagnostics. Now due to arrival of PIGD, then your Erickson method, etc., the old act, PNDT Act 1994, would become ineffective. Why? Because PNDT Act simply says that if you are trying to know the sex of fetus, it is illegal. Here there is no need to know the sex of the fetus. You can decide the sex of the fetus. That is why this act was amended in 2003, and now it reads Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostic Technique Act, PC and PNDT Act 2003. Now due to addition of the term preconception, the scope of the act expand, and it covers all the techniques like XY separation of sperm, in vitro fertilization, that is fertilization is test tube, or intrauterine insemination. Here the sperm is IUI. In IUI, sperm is deposited in uterus of female with insemination gun. With an insemination gun. This has been used in animal husbandry. So that can be also repeated in human. Using certain equipment, the sperm can be separated based on X and Y composition, and they can be deposited into the uterus of the female. That is why this act was amended, and this act now reads PC and PNDT Act. The primary purpose of this act was to prevent the chance of misuse of this act for sex determination. Then we discussed about chromosomes. Chromosomes were made up of DNA and histone protein. Now let us go into the structure of DNA. We all know that DNA is a double helical model was given by Watson and Crick. Now one of the most authentic technique even in biology, chemistry, physics is X-ray crystallography. So X-ray crystallography of DNA was done by Rosalind Franklin, a lady called Rosalind Franklin. She is called as the Dark Lady of DNA. Rosalind Franklin is called Dark Lady of DNA. Everybody knows Watson and Crick, but the main scientific work was done by this lady Rosalind Franklin. We all give credit to Watson and Crick, but the primary work was done by Rosalind Franklin. Now, in case of DNA, sugar and phosphate. This is sugar, pentose sugar. It has 5 carbon. Pentose sugar. One, two, three, 4 and 5. This is the sugar. And this one is phosphate, PO4. Sugar and phosphate forms the outer backbone. So on the outer side you have sugar and phosphate. This is again sugar, this is again phosphate. Sugar and phosphate forming the outer backbone. So this outer backbone is formed by sugar and phosphate. And on the inner side you have nitrogenous bases. You have 4 nitrogenous bases, A, T, G, C, adenine, thymine, cytosine and guanine. On the inner side, you have 4 nitrogenous bases: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. ATGC. Deoxyribose sugar and phosphate form the outer backbone, whereas nitrogenous base on the inner side. The nitrogenous bases are attached with each other between A and T, attached with each other through hydrogen bond. There is double hydrogen bond between adenine and thymine. Between A and T you have double hydrogen bond, and between G and C you have triple hydrogen bond. Between A and T double hydrogen bond, and between G and C you have triple hydrogen bond. You have triple hydrogen bond. So you have two terms. One is nucleoside, another is nucleotide. Deoxyribose sugar plus nitrogenous base forms nucleoside, and when you attach phosphate into it, it becomes nucleotide. So one is nucleoside, another is nucleotide. Nucleoside is deoxyribose sugar plus nitrogenous base, and nucleotide is nucleoside plus phosphate. So one of the genetic material. The next genetic material is RNA. We had discussed about RNA in virus also. Now what is the difference between DNA and RNA? Both are genetic material. Both are genetic material. RNA has ribose sugar, whereas DNA has deoxyribose sugar. The nitrogenous bases in case of RNA are A, adenine, cytosine, guanine, and one unique thing over here is uracil. So RNA has uracil in place of thymine. In DNA it was thymine, in RNA it is uracil. So two major difference over here. RNA has ribose sugar, and in terms of nitrogenous base it has uracil in place of thymine. Uracil in place of thymine. Now DNA was double stranded. DNA structure was like this. This was the structure of DNA, double helical structure. This was the structure of DNA, double helical structure. Whereas in case of, so DNA is double helical. Whereas RNA is single stranded, but it can be double stranded or it can have complex structure. Mostly it is single stranded, but it can have double strand also, and it can also have complex structure. And RNA is less stable as compared to DNA. In the beginning organisms, virus and other, you have RNA as the genetic material. But later what happens? RNA is there, but the main genetic material becomes DNA. Why? RNA is less stable. But in evolution, RNA came first. Now there are three types of RNA. Three types. First is mRNA or messenger RNA. mRNA or messenger RNA. It contains the message for protein synthesis. Protein is nothing but a chain of amino acid. So protein is chain of amino acid. Now there is a term called genetic code. We have the Indian scientist Dr. Hargobind Khurana. Dr. Hargobind Khurana deciphered genetic code. He cracked the genetic code. Now genetic code refers to the sequence of 3 codes or 3 nucleotides which correspond to the sequence of amino acid in protein. So 3 nucleotide code for 1 amino acid. So this is the correlation. Genetic code is the correlation between genetic code is the correlation between three nucleotide and one amino acid. So 3 nucleotide code for 1 amino acid, and these 3 nucleotide together are called triplet. That is why the term is that triplet codon. 3 nucleotide codes for 1 amino acid. The second type of RNA is tRNA or transfer RNA. Transfer RNA. It carries the amino acid to ribosome during protein synthesis. The amino acids are distributed here, there inside the cytoplasm. The work of transfer RNA is to carry the amino acid to the ribosome for protein synthesis. And the last RNA is your ribosomal RNA. This is found in ribosome. We had discussed that ribosomes are made up of RNA and protein. Ribosomes are made up of RNA and protein.